Greetings of peace. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I'm Jonathan Bay. For this particular presentation, I'm going to respectfully remove my fez as not to confuse some who may assume that I am a sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I am not. I wear my fez out of respect, not relative to an ecclesiastic title. I respect and support monetarily the Moorish Science Temple of America, but I am not speaking from the position as an official of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Today I am speaking purely as a loving, caring family member who wants to take this opportunity to provide you with some important information. For this particular information, I have made myself a series of notes. This index of notes is simply so that I can keep a correct chronology of the information that follows. Much of what I have to say during this presentation, and it will be entitled Moor Talk Episode 14, may for some seem far-fetched, even contrived. But I assure you, every aspect of what you are about to hear is absolutely true in every aspect of its nature. If you are a Moor, then you are, by pure default, genius. It is, in fact, the genes in us which have afforded us all, each Moor, opportunity to reanimate the exceptional brilliance which lies innately latent in us all, temporarily dormant, awaiting that inevitable rejuvenation. With the resources of your melanin's genetic memory lies a virtual treasure trove of epiphanies awaiting reactivation. That is one reason we are, by some, so very feared. This is how it works. Well, you've all heard the saying from time to time, study, study, study. And yes, that's absolutely extremely key and important. However, and this is a huge capitalized however, it must not only be the correct information, it must also be received in a correct chronology or order. There are degrees to understanding, but there are particular articulations, positionings of how that information should best be received. As you read the correct information or consume it by whatever manner, in the correct degrees and correct articulation, a natural reconnection begins to manifest. There is not only a great deal of bad information proliferating in the internet these days, there's a huge amount of disinformation being purposefully interjected into the collective consciousness of those who are only now naturally seeing that it is their time to reanimate their cognitive awareness of self. When we all arrive here in the objective plane of this dimension's perceived reality, by our own volition, we each possess our own uniquely created vibratory frequency. It's an oscillation, a unique wobble, if you will. Everything has a vibration to it, as unique as your fingerprint. A harmonic resonance, a vibration, unique to you yourself alone. Just as no two objects can occupy the same space in objective reality, no two vibratory frequencies can exist within the same location in what we call the superset of our subjective plane of reality. The superset is that out of which our objective plane of reality manifests. Think of it similar to this: an old radio dial. As you take the dial and you turn it, it begins to dissipate in the noise and fog or static that you would hear, which gives way to clarity of the frequency that you're trying to reach, like 99.5 on your FM dial. As you turn into it, it will become clearer and clearer, and then crystal clear. The same is true with respect to one who is recalibrating their neurofiber network's vibratory frequency. Every individual's place in this perceived reality, this place we call the objective reality, the place in which objects exist, exists within a greater superset, which is called the subjective reality. And as I said, as we, through our own volition and desire, enter into this realm of our perceived objective reality, we come in with a perfect, harmonious nature. Each of us uniquely possessing our own frequency. Just as no two objects, as stated, can exist within the same plane of existence in an objective realm, no two frequencies, vibratory tones, can exist within the subjective realm of reality. But as we enter here in our perfect state, our harmonious resonance becomes discordant. We become out of tune with nature. And that has been done purposefully. Now, if nature is nothing else, it is definitively and absolutely efficient. You may have heard the term or the phrase of saying that the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. Well, this is true also within the neurofiber network of your actual cellular brain's workings. It's not intended to be going all around in a method that would be illogical in order to reach a particular one synapsis that is to be joined with another, finding one. That's not natural. When the prophet said, returning to the mindset of your ancient forebearers, the mastermind was actually speaking from a truly biological, physiological, neurofiber network remapping of your neurofiber networks. In other words, we have been so distuned, misprogrammed, disconnected, short-circuited to an extent, that it has been virtually over millennium impossible for many to come into a correct state of mind, as it were. Literally, many of us have lost our minds. What's occurring now, however, as we are receiving this correct information in the correct manner and the correct articulation, when I say articulation, I'm talking about the order in which it is received and the degrees in which we are being presented with the information, the correct source information. What happens in our rejuvenation periods, period of sleep, is that there is a remapping, a rewiring, a reconnecting of the natural neural fiber networks of our brain's ability to connect those natural synapses in a way that are most natural. When that occurs, and as you continue to enjoy of this new information, within the melanin of your genetic makeup, the genes in us, that genius begins to unlock the genetic memories, as well as allows for there to be a shifting of that natural vibratory frequency, which is yours and yours alone. And as you begin to re-oscillate, because everything vibrates, to your particular frequency, when you are recalibrating your own particular vibratory frequency and coming back in tune with nature, and things begin to come clearer and clearer, and the static begins to dissipate, and you start getting those epiphanies of brilliance and understandings and comprehension from your Akashic records, and the information that is not from books alone, but actual information that is encoded data within the melanin of your physical, biological makeup. This is an awakening that is transpiring right now. So, what we're going to do is we're going to begin to identify the processes, the methodology by which this occurs. Everything is a science. If it's not a science, then it does not exist. Even law is a science. Matter of fact, law is the primary science, because all things are governed by law. It doesn't matter what it is. If I take this pin, I lift it, and I let it go, that's the law of gravity. If I stick my hand into fire, I burn myself, because that's the law of thermodynamics. If I touch an electrical outlet, I shock myself. That's the law of electricity. Even those strange and exotic laws that happen near or within black holes that we yet understand are all aspects of governing rules of order. Catalysts, actions, reactions, cause and effect. That's law. And when you bring all of the laws together, that determines how things operate, the functionality. These are methodologies by which things function. And when you bring all of the laws of practical reality to bear, all laws are all law.
physical substance, no object, liquid, gas, nor solid. There was only a singular, non-material existence, a pure and completely stable, unified, undifferentiated existence, possessing the ultimate of possibilities. And among these possibilities was time itself. The beginning was the simplest of understandings. The primordial consciousness, the knowledge, I am. And with the occurrence of that first event, time began. And that first event was immediately followed by another, the occurrence of the first desire. I will. Instantaneously, by way of the will, came an unfathomably complex, non-physical, multi-dimensional expanse in which all non-material, non-objective principalities, the forces governing order, cause, and effect, would come forth, exist, and reside. And by way of these balanced forces, the enabling extensions of the singular, unified, undifferentiated existence, the will allowed for the presence of a space beyond probability in which material things of the most primordial, physical, objective nature could and would come into being and exist. The alpha colagrium within the singular stream of consciousness. With unity persisting, here all events in the physical and objective realm of the omni-singular existence would occur. The perception of the here and now, the realm of present, is where the individual nature, for all intent and purpose, resides. For many, if not most, this, the universal aspect of us, our unified oneness, that which all things and beings are intrinsically linked, operates beyond the perceptions of our physical conscious precepts. And it is this one fact which stands as our only true divine point, our inability to recognize our oneness, and that oneness is pure, unadulterated, unconditional love, that which bestows in the objective as well as subjective realms of perception all love.
Orthodox Moors are not revolutionists. We are evolutionists. A revolution is simply a circle, returning you to the same place in which you began, yet only a bit more tattered and a bit more worn for worse, whereas the natural spiral and evolution of nature is always progressively upward. Well over 30 years ago, as a self-employed private entrepreneur, I was contracted by Children's Hospital, National Care Center, Washington, D.C., to create a device that would greatly reduce the stress and anxiety of their senior surgical staff and ERN. The ERN stands for Executive Registered Nurses. Those were the nurses that were controlling the various centers throughout the hospital. The device I created, of which I retained the intellectual property rights to, was called Secret Excursions. It was a proprietary blend of LFOs, an audio modulating binary frequency module known to reduce stress. The National Care Center was so impressed with the results and the effect it had on the doctors and staff that my services were again contracted by the National Pediatrics Association of America to create another, but yet more advanced device. What was more personally important for me, however, was the project led me into a 10-year scientific exploration into what would actually cause the effect that they were experiencing. That's what I was wondering. In other words, I went on search for the Orpheus tone. After years of trials and tribulations, errors are made along the way in any type of scientific endeavor, and I had the assistance of the Solfegic Institute to identify and finally isolate and create the proprietary LFO blend. This arithmetic binary pulsation of patterns with the LFO's low oscillating frequencies was not merely an aid to assist one in relaxation, but was actually an inducer. It turned out to be a stimuli which actually caused the pineal gland's natural release of secretions similar to serotonin. As a matter of fact, the term secretion comes from the term secret etymologically. One of the vital natural chemicals released from the pineal gland. There are more powerful chemicals released by the pineal gland, some even so powerful as to induce acid travel. Your pineal gland is actually the window to the soul of man. That was the wisdom or the wise dome of King Solomon, the soul of man. Solomon, soul of man. It is you who will begin to create the mathematical permutations of your own future's probability wave collapsing. Einstein said in his final interview, when they asked him the question, "What is reality?" his reply was, "It's the same thing that all of the wise men, sages, gurus, and masterminds of all ages have always said that it was." And he said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. The Planck level is the event horizon between the subjective reality and objective plane of gross existence. Now, when I use the term gross, what is meant there is the physical plane of existence. This is the region where molecules are formed out of subjective reality. Below our physical objective plane of reality, there's a line called the Planck level. Below that, everything is consciousness. This is where probability waves are formed. Probability waves are formed, and then they collapse into reality. When you become the manifester of your own destiny, it is you who causes most of what occurs in your reality. When you become the cause of most of what occurs in your life, you become your own cosmos, the creator of your own event horizon, your own horizon of events, your own Horus zone. In this new Moorish Renaissance and Aquarian age of enlightenment, we are not awakening to repeat the errors of our past, and no disrespect at all meant by the following. It is only that we are a scientific evolution of our predecessors, and they had the ability to exercise the potential in which we have, then we would not be where we are today. We are a new evolutionary breed of Moor, possessing an even higher degree of potential, energy, and intellect than ever before in history. That is why we have been afforded this opportunity to participate in the uplifting of fallen humanity. If we take advantage of the extremely time-sensitive opportunity, it is not inevitable by any means, but certainly possible. Yeshua the one they call Jesus, said, "You too can do these things and even greater still." Yeshua, the one they call Jesus, was not some son of a lowly carpenter, as you may have been told from the pulpit, but you have to be careful not to be pulled in that pit. If, like King David, his forebearer, was of a lineage all destined to be kings, then how could he be the son of a lowly carpenter? No. His father, Yeshua's father, Yosef, was of the house of the Davidic order, the powerful order of Melchizedek, which was a teaching lineage. They were not builders of furniture. He was a builder of men's character and spiritual enlightenment, keepers of the covenant. That is why they were so feared and hated by the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the lawyers and the bankers of the time, who were in alliance and allegiance with the Roman European occupiers. Our prophet Noble Drew Ali, or Professor Drew, as I was introduced to his personality by Brother Bay, an engineer at WOL in Washington, D.C., and the owner, Kathy Hughes, back in the 80s, was an individual who, like Yeshua, set an example for us to follow. An example means something or someone who you can aspire to become similarly with. Can you imagine a legion upon legions of Noble Drew Alis? It's possible. But in actuality, we only need a select few, 448,000 perhaps, calibrating at the perfect resonant harmonious frequency to effectuate an instantaneous next evolution, a love-based evolution of man's consciousness out of these dark ages. I'll not have the time or the opportunity in this brief presentation to go into all of the basics of the physics, Moorish science, and or metaphysical methodologies, as it is much more extensively explained in the key. The Moorish science methodology of recalibrating the resonating harmonic frequencies of your individual unique vibratory oscillation, not merely on a cellular level, but on an actual biological atomic level, literally shatters and dissolves the calcium deposits encrusting your pineal gland. This occurs during your rejuvenation periods of sleep as you obtain the correct information in the correct order. Your own crown chakra will radiate into your pineal gland's prana receptors, creating a chi vortex, the virtual spiral of energy, the natural connecting of all of your spiritual organs known as chakra regions will reanimate, triggering as a catalyst. And this catalyst will be the next evolution of humanity. The term prana or chi literally translates to virtual, vital, cosmic energy. Consciousness is billions of times exponentially more powerful than the atomic energy we're familiar with, and far beyond the speed of light, instantaneously, less than a blink of the eye. Detoxifying your pineal gland is critically important to the evolution of your maximum potential. Just as the number 666, not representing something spooky as you may have heard in the pulpits, but again, be weary of not being pulled in those pits. It stands for 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons of the human base molecular carbon module. That's what we are made of. we are base carbon creatures, which if viewed under an electron microscope will reveal the energy radiating from it forms the Star of David. Adam and Eve, also metaphoric literary characters, represent metaphorically not a duality but a polarity. Eve is the evolution of the Adam of man. Orthodox Moors, those who practice religiously the nature of our culture, honor thy mother and thy father, so that the days on this plane may remain. Now, of course, that's paraphrasing, but what it's referring to is a continuing of the revitalization of your Moorish heritage and spiritual and cultural heritage, a preservation of your Moorish culture. When I use the word religion, I'm not speaking of the dogma or the meaningless dogmatic rituals known to religion, but I'm speaking of religion as religioning is a two-part phrase referring to the religioning or realigning or reconnecting of yourself to your culture's heritage. A legion is a group, like the Foreign Legion or the American Legion or any legion. And as in remembering and realigning and remaining and reanimating. This religioning is a reconnecting to your legion, to your ancient forebearers, and a critically important aspect that, as explained, is returning back, not simply spiritually, but physiologically, through the scientific methodologies, benefiting by the natural cosmic law of cause and effect, to the correct mindset of your ancient forebearers, non-Eurocentrically programmed ancient forebearers.
I am not Latina. Yo no soy Latina. Simply speaking, the Spanish language does not make me part of Europe. Speaking English doesn't make me part of Europe. These two languages have been forced on my people for the last 500 years. Whether you are from Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala, a reservation in Arizona, Mexico City, you have been kept ignorant, subservient to European culture. We are victims of colonialism. A colonialism that began in 1492. We are not the children of Cortez. We are not the people that came on La Pinta, La Niña, La Santa Maria. We have nothing to do with Spain. We are the indigenous people of this continent who are falsely called Hispanic and Latino as a way to kill our indigenous identity and history. We are supposed to disappear like the wind. We are supposed to shatter like the damn ground that we walk on. We are supposed to be turning into ashes. We're not supposed to exist. This is not part of the game plan for the Europeans. And here we are, ignorant of who we are, dyeing our hair blonde, hating who we are, putting blue-green eye contacts, watching novelas of a bunch of bleach blonde women being served by full-blooded indigenous people. Spanish is being glamorized as the most exotic language, and we take pride in it as if it belonged to us. as if our people weren't killed to speak Spanish, like if our people weren't forced to speak Spanish, like if our people weren't raped for the last 5 centuries to exist as Spanish-speaking slaves of Europeans. Whether you speak English or Spanish, those languages are not us and they do not define us. You see, before we spoke English and Spanish, we were actually speaking languages that reflected us, like Nahuatl, Yoemi, Quiche. We spoke languages that reflected who we were. We had languages, we had names that reflected who we were. We had a worldview that reflected on us, the reflection of the Creator. But these last 5 centuries of systematic ignorance and this education that only reinforces white supremacy has us confused, lost. But we are here. We are the survivors of the world's biggest genocide, where 95% of our population was wiped out. And yet we have no idea. We have no clue. Our parents don't know. They have been working so hard in the fields. A lot of them didn't even finish preschool, middle school. But here we are, survivors, in our own right, in our own land, homeless on our own land. We are Nicantlaca. We are the indigenous people of this continent. We have been divided by false borders. We have been divided by false languages. We are working in the Mexica movement to create an establishment, this unity, Tahuantinsuyu Nation, Suyu Nation, Suyu Nation, Mexica movement, all the way from North and South America. This is our continent, separated by European borders. We walk ignorantly of who we are. We look down on the ground and don't even realize that it is ours. We are the Nicantlaca people, and we are learning the truth. Mexica movement, we invite you. Join us in this liberation, the true decolonization of our mind. We are colonized. We do not accept it. We have to fight it, resist it with everything that you have. We are not products of Europe. We are not the children of Cortez. We are not the people that came on La Niña, La Pinta, La Santa Maria. We are the indigenous people that stood before them. For 5 centuries, this is who we are. But we're taught to be fake white people, a fake imitation of who they are. But we're not. No matter how hard we try to be white, our ancient connection is far too deep to be bleached away by self-hate. Let's love ourselves. Let's learn who we are. Let's decolonize ourselves. Brothers and sisters, Mexican, Central American, South American, Native American, we are one. One people under occupation by European colonization. We are not Hispanic. We are not Latino. We are not Indians because we are not from India. We are the indigenous people from this land. We are Nicantlaca. We are Nicantlaca.
The Nicantlaca movement helps us to appreciate even further that we are by no means nor measure a monochromatic amalgamation. The vast multi-spectrum complexity of our rich and multifaceted cultures, each unique within themselves, give rise to our collective comprehension of the complex nature of who we historically are across a varied treasure of our diverse social tapestry.
My nanny was white, so I totally get it. Like, I feel like I'm part white because of my nanny.
Okay, so I get that you're a proud white person, but you need to tone down your attire just a notch. This is a corporate office. This isn't a Blink-182 concert.
You speak English? Uh-huh. Thank God. Okay, can you talk to my accountant for me? I feel like he never understands me.
Sure.
This is my friend, okay? This is my friend.
You're white, right? I hooked up with a white guy once. He was crazy.
Man, I totally have a thing for white girls. They're like, oh,
Is it true that all white people have small, quiet families? I wish I had that. How do you say your name again?
Macy?
I love how you pronounce it. One more time.
Macy?
God, I could never say it like that.
Which do you prefer, Caucasian or European?
Oh my god, I hate spicy food. I feel like I was meant to be white, you know? Hey, are you watching Orange is the New Black?
Duh.
Do you love all the white women on there? So much attitude, right? Your cousin's having a sweet 16. Oh my gosh, I have to meet all your crazy aunts and uncles. Can I come?
I love the way that white people announce soccer. I love it. It's like, oh, they dribble past the defender and goal.
You're white? I'm sorry, you're just not what I picture when I think of a white person. That's crazy. Whoa, you went to Princeton? Oh, it's because you're white. That's how you got in. You're so pretty. You could totally pass for Latina. So are you like here, like legally? I'm sorry, I meant documented?
Now, the purpose of the last piece, so as not to be misconstrued into something else, all babies are beautiful, all children are beautiful, but it is incumbent upon our parents within our community to recognize that that is, in fact, a form of programming. When we are continuously provided that type of, especially in the newscasting, I know it's supposed to be a feel-good piece at the end that they show the pictures of the babies and the rest, but we see them all the time. Matter of fact, we see the royal family more often than we see the presidential family here in the United States, which is odd. But the point is that it leaves a psychological residue in the mind of our children that there is an acceptable degree of, let's say, that erroneous entitledshipness, that they are entitled to be considered as important because they are from this English-European lineage, heritage, and that for some reason it's okay for us to continuously be subjected to that as being the something that's supposed to make us feel good. I mean, like I said, all children are beautiful. All babies are beautiful. It's not until the adults, the parents, teach them to be ugly that they become different people. Now, it's up to us as adults to not act like minorities. Pick up the phone, recognize you can contact the networks and tell them, thank you very much, I've had enough, no more from me, thank you. You can do that. Now, speaking of the term minority, minority has nothing to do with numbers, as in the smaller group. Because, as an example, I even heard on the newscaster said that the minorities are now the majority. It doesn't make any sense. It's oxymoronic. How can a minority all of a sudden be the majority? The language doesn't even go together unless you're admitting that it's a status, that minority is a status opposed to something that denotes a number for them to say the minority is now the majority. How can you be a majority minority unless you're talking about status? And it is, because minority means being unable to handle your affairs as an adult, that you must be thought of in your status as a minor would be considered, a childlike individual unable to take care of your own affairs as one would an adult. So don't get it twisted. Our Prophet Noble Drew Ali identified that he came to us as a universal prophet, which means for all men. But he came to us because we needed him most. So that helps us to appreciate that all men are to be considered universally as equal to one another, and that we should love our fellow man, not just those that look like us, or those that we would consider as being part of our community. So when I show that, that's not to deliver negative feelings with respect to how we should think about European children. It's just to stimulate the adults within our community to recognize that that is also a form of programming, and that that programming is in fact impacting upon your children subconsciously. And that it is okay to pick up the phone, contact networks, and tell them that they should kind of dial that back a little bit. That point was pressed to help drive home the idea and the concept that it's you who has the power to effectuate the change that you wish to see. So exercise it. I'm going to switch gears for a moment to allow for you to have an opportunity to benefit from an audio clip that I'm certain you will enjoy. This is another learning moment from the MoorsDirectory.com.
United States Congressional Records, United States of America, Representative James Tropicant Jr. of Ohio, addressing the House of Representatives, etc. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11, and members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March the 9th, 1933, 48 Statute, 1 Public Law, 89-719, and declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent, HJR 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, and all United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only, under emergency war powers. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. And this new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. And this act was instituted and established by transferring and replacing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund, Public Law 94-564, page 8, Section HR 13955 reads in part, the United States Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money in America. And since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a plain check was used as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money, quote unquote. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government and is not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coins. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitutes. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. And we the people are no longer have any money, and most Americans have never been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt, along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation and devaluation of currency. And whenever there's an increase in the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply of money and movement, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, and a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. And there is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt, quote unquote. To pay a debt, you must pay with the value of substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. And no contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control of the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much wealth already. And that's by virtue of those Federal Reserve notes. And their lust for power and control, and since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. And the Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers and a common law trust, quote unquote, use the common law trust, quote unquote, as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust, quote unquote. And the U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, quote unquote, to duplicate a quote unquote joint stock trust in 1873. And the Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870, although post facto laws are strictly prohibited by the Constitution. See Section 19.3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States, operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law, and the lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it as security by the lender or underwriter. And the several Federal Reserve Acts stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold, and there was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. And prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear, allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title, and the U.S. citizen tenant franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his or her birth certificate. And in 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, to the Federal Reserve System. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign a collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. And since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. And they also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and non-profit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. And unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution feudal roots, whereby the land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are tenants and sharecroppers, renting our own property from the sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank, and we the people have exchanged one master for another. And this has been going on for over 80 years now without informed knowledge of the American people and without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it is easy to grasp why America is so fundamentally bankrupt. And why don't more people own their properties outright? And why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? And we are reaping what we have sown. And the result of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and the foreclosure of American property, precious liberties, and the way of life. And few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt, and our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforcing the paying of it. And America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. And this is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America, and take back your country. And that's James Trafalgar, except on the floor of the House of Representatives, and is documented.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that.
We have a privately owned central bank system disguised as a government-owned system.
There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.